Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host Khalid. But today is Monday, the 27th of January 2025. The month of January is also passing rather quickly, and these are the stories that we have in store for you during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with Trump's immigration policy. As he had signed the executive orders, as he had said in different statements, now Trump is, of course, now moving towards the immigrants and enforcing his strict immigration policy. That story and study will come to light. Now, as we know, the different issues concerning the migrants, especially from Mexico and other parts of the world, have been a concern for Donald Trump and the Republican Party. Now, there was a huge row with Colombia, which now has been sorted. The Colombia had in the past refused to accept the migrants, and now it has accepted. Other countries have certain reservations as far as these migrants and their return is concerned. Whether the US will be able to adhere to their reservations is another question altogether. But a lot of question marks also remain. Whether a Muslim plus ban will be enforced, whether foreign students in America who speak up on Palestine will be also told to leave the country, and so on and so forth. This is going to be our first segment. Our second story concerns power stability system, economic recovery in Pakistan. Let's begin with the monetary policy statement that has come by the State Bank of Pakistan, and they have decided to cut the policy rate by 100 basis points to 12%, which will be effective from the end of January, in fact, from the and this is going to move further as far as the decline in inflation is concerned. How is this going to impact things is what we will discuss. Also, the Prime Minister has directed the Power Division to collect electricity tariffs across the country by 7 rupees per unit for all the consumer categories, as well as the World Bank Support Mission that is visiting Pakistan from today until tomorrow to develop a work plan and agree on next steps to agree on the preparation of this reactive compensation devices project, which is critical for system reliability. This and all will be discussed in our second story. Then we are going to talk about Senate Standing Committee on Information and Technology that has approved the Digital National Bill, Pakistan Bill 2025. During the meeting, the committee passed this bill. The bill was introduced by Ms. Shahzad Fatima Khaja, who is the Minister for Information Technology and Telecommunication in the Senate on the 24th of January this very year. Next polio virus has been discovered in 3 samples that have come from 3 different districts. Now, they have come from Thatta, Umarkot and Naushero Feroz in Sindh that have tested positive for the WPV1. We all know about polio, that it is a paralyzing disease which has no cure. So the importance of polio vaccine becomes even more important. Next, Romanian artifacts, in fact, including a 2,500-year-old gold helmet have been stolen from the Drents Museum in the Netherlands. And of course, there has been a huge hue and cry by the Romanian government as well as far as this is concerned. Nevertheless, let's see what happens, whether these artifacts will in fact be recovered. Let's begin with our first segment, and that concerns Donald Trump's immigration policy and its implementation that has now begun. We've been joined by 2 guests. Let me introduce them to you one by one, and both are online. Our first guest is Matthew Bryza. He's the former ambassador, White House and senior State Department official. Matthew, thank you very much to have joined us, and welcome to Newsroom. Our second guest is our Shahid Masroor Kiani Saab, former ambassador and foreign affairs analyst. Thank you very much, Ambassador Saab, to have joined us as well. Let's begin with you, Matthew. US President Donald Trump had announced new restrictions on immigration and asylum hours after taking office. He had talked about a national emergency at their southern border, reinstating his Remain in Mexico policy, designating cartels as foreign terrorist organization by invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. Now that all of this has gone into implementation phase, how do you view the reaction that is coming internally and externally?
Yes, Mr. Booth, thank you so much for the honor of being with you and His Excellency, Ambassador Kiani. Well, thank you. First of all, his steps are what he talked about during the election campaign, and it's, that helped him get elected. And the Democratic Party realized that it now must take a much more firm stance to control immigration, as Trump has been advocating. Otherwise, it's going to lose election after election. And by the way, I mean, for all your viewers, I don't need to remind you that Pakistan itself, right, has implemented tough immigration controls on Afghanistan since October of 2023. So I think in general, President Trump's push to make sure that people entering the United States and remaining there do so legally is popular. But his rhetoric and some of the steps that you just listed are not popular. So we're seeing, for example, a push back by 4 states whose attorneys general have sued the U.S. government, and the case has been taken up by a federal judge to stop the end of birthright citizenship. Also, in several democratically controlled cities around the country, including my hometown of Chicago, the local authorities have said they're not going to cooperate with the federal government in rounding up undocumented migrants into the United States unless there's a warrant for their arrest for a criminal action. So there's some resistance already beginning against these steps by Trump, even though overall the push to secure America's border is popular.
All right, Shahid Kiani Saab, now that Trump has announced it and now that we are seeing the implementation of this order regarding immigration, the numbers are estimated anywhere between 11 million and 14 million and could increase or decrease with time. Is this going to continue till the last of such immigrant in the US leaves, as has been decided and stated at various occasions by Mr. Donald Trump?
Well, His Excellency Ambassador Bryza has said it very clearly that the steps taken by the Trump administration to throw out or push out the illegal immigrants, undocumented, as they say very rightly, is very popular with the people. And just let me state to you, I'm not condoning what Trump administration is doing, but it's a sovereign right of countries to accept or to reject or to throw out undocumented. What we have done in Pakistan is the same. For example, the Afghans, refugees who've been living here for, I don't know, for decades. We have taken a very principled stand at these undocumented documents. They were refugees, basically. They cannot become permanent citizens. They have to move out. Now, we will be we will be affected by this, with the Trump administration's decision not to accept refugees, because these refugees living in our country are a big problem. And that is one of the reasons that the government decided in principle to move them out. Now, thousands of them are living here. What are we going to do about it? I think we will have to talk to the Trump administration behind the scenes. In diplomacy, many things happen. You talk to them and ask them that, you see, we cannot afford to keep these people here. Because they are now they have already been processed and they have to move out, either to United States, Australia, Canada, wherever they want to go. But then they have to move out. But the problem of humanitarian issue is, and another thing the ambassador said very rightly, that the certain states are asking the legal papers. Please show us the papers on which you are throwing these people out. This is a problem. Then another problem also, which I would like to remind you, is when the lady bishop addressed President Trump and said that, you see, it's a humanitarian issue. Then he said that these are the people who are cleaning the streets, who are, doing odd jobs which the regular citizens of the US will not do. Now, what are you going to do about it? You cannot have such a large vacuum of, leave such a large vacuum where you throw the people out, force them out. One is humanitarian issue, that is also important. But there is another practical issue. How will the city states, or sorry, the city councils, would a municipal council be able to deal with this thing if you throw these people out?
That's an interesting concept. That's an interesting point, but the fact is that this discussion will extend to a very, very long time and have to talk about a lot of subjects concerning this immigration policy. Matthew, coming to you, Sunday 956 arrests, before that 538 arrests, and of course migrants are being sent to different countries as well. in military airplanes as well. But on Thursday, New York Mayor Baraka said in a statement that the ICE agents raided a local establishment without producing a warrant. He said this is a plain violation of the US Constitution. Then you've got Democrats from Democratic senators who say that this is going to sow fear in in different communities. Do such acts indeed, in your point of view, sow fear, and what kind of solutions in your point of view are required for this step to move on untethered?
Well, His Excellency Ambassador Kiani was getting at this a moment ago when he talked about the humanitarian consequences of expelling people. It's brutal when the families are torn apart or the whole family is deported and the ICE agents come into the communities and arrest people. There's one case that just was reported today of some ICE agents going into a church and pulling out one illegal migrant, or so that's very painful, I think, from a humanitarian perspective. But whether that sort of action is unconstitutional remains of great debate, because as senior U.S. officials in charge of enforcement of these regulations are saying, in fact, the lead one, Tom Homan, he's saying entering or crossing an international border and entering a foreign country is a criminal action that can be prosecuted. And a dear old friend of mine who happens to have been the president of Georgia, Mikhail Saakashvili, has been in prison for several years, convicted of entering Georgia and crossing its border illegally. So those are crimes. It's just that the United States has chosen not to enforce those crimes, or really has been unable to, because there's so many resources required to identify those people who are in the country illegally, to detain them, to round them up, and then to deport them. And frankly, those facilities have not been built yet in the United States, and the money is not available to allow these sorts of thoroughgoing actions. As you said in your initial question, Mr. Boot, up to 11 million people. That will not happen. The U.S. will not have those resources.
All right. Coming to you, Shahid Saab, we all must have read, and you must have read also, the issue that came up with Colombia, with the Colombian president, the tiff that came up between the Colombian president and the US president, and now that the Colombian president has relented, the military aircrafts have gone back with the immigrants into Colombia. What are the reservations from countries such as Colombia as far as the return of migrants is concerned?
Meaning, in principle, as Ambassador Bryza has said, yes, it's a crime to enter some country without the required documents. But another thing practical is, I think the Trump administration should talk to these countries first. Let their ambassadors talk to their government, take them into confidence. They should have the proper, number of people. Yes, these are the number of people from your country which are undocumented, and we will also send them back. Let that country also make preparations to receive them. It's very important. The other thing is, these city councils which are there, they have the number. They know the number of people who are working in different places, in restaurants or cleaning or whatever they are doing. They will have the numbers and their names and everything. Let the city councils also should be taken into confidence, okay? And then the documents, very right, warrant of arrest should be there. It should be taken slowly and steadily. This should be taken, not to force these people, send them back. It's a humanitarian issue and it's a practical issue also, both. This is not going to work. And my own opinion is, neither do they have the wherewithal to put them in transport aircraft and send them. Again, they will have the same problem that they had with the president of Colombia, where he was forced to accept. If they do it in an organized manner, give them time, talk to them, and then or then you send them, there will be less criticism of what Trump administration is doing than what they are doing now. It is a humanitarian issue. Yes, very right, and sir, this should be taken into account. The United States has been in the forefront of raising human rights issues with so many countries, including our country. So this is an issue on which I think sanity should prevail. My opinion is that as the time goes ahead, maybe the Trump administration, the advisors sitting with them, may tell the president, sir, let's take a measured position on this thing. Let's do our own homework and do it instead of looking at like it's the presidential campaign. Let the people also be told by the Trump administration that yes, we send them back, but we need time. We need to do our own homework.
Right. Coming to you, Matthew, whether it be Colombia, whether it be Honduras, or whether it be Brazil, whose foreign minister statement led to Colombia, denying the migrants for, entry into their country for the first time, and now that he has agreed, now that certain sanctions were implied to be put on Colombia. Honduras, Brazil, Colombia. Do you feel that the immigration process is somehow less dignified than it should be?
Oh, definitely. As Ambassador Kiani was saying, loading these people, rounding them up, loading them onto military aircraft. The U.S. doesn't have a right to send a military aircraft to any country without its permission also, right? But this is all reflecting the fact, as Ambassador was saying, that President Trump in these early days is behaving as if he's still operating during the election campaign. So he's a great showman. I mean, he made his name as a television personality. So he's like, it's like a circus person right now, like a circus director. He's making a big show to demonstrate that action is being taken, but he knows he's about to face legal struggles with the courts, as I already mentioned. He'll face a legal battle with the court over the denial of birthright citizenship, which could violate the U.S. Constitution's 14th Amendment. But he wants to demonstrate he's moving fast. He's a man of action. So you may know, and the viewers may have seen, that on Inauguration Day a week ago today, he signed a few hundred executive orders that in many cases did nothing. They just said, my new administration should study how we might address this problem. But it looked like he was doing something. And so he's going through that phase now. And hopefully there'll be a much more dignified approach when it comes to whether it be Brazil and Honduras and Guatemala and Mexico or any country, or Brazil, to which these deportees will return.
Now, Ambassador Kiani, when it comes to illegal immigrants, it's not just Colombia, it's not just Honduras, it's not just Brazil. There are also El Salvador, India, and Honduras that are part of this illegal number of aliens or people present within the United States. Do you feel that these countries will also accept eventually the immigrants back into their own countries?
Well, I doubt it. First, let me say another thing. There are people who have come to this country. They were facing political persecution in their own countries, asylum seekers, and genuine asylum seekers. What are you going to do? What will the Trump administration do with them? Do you think these countries will accept them? I doubt very much they will accept it, first of all. Second thing is that will be the first thing you can do to somebody who has sought political asylum here, facing persecution in this country, and are told, okay, now you have to move out. Where would they go? So this is something very important. The other thing, as you said, that how will they deal with it? I am of the opinion that I am rather convinced that sanity will prevail. Slowly, steadily, the Trump administration people will tell him that, okay, we are going to send them back. Definitely, I think he's made a commitment to his people, and he has got a lot of support for that. Let's not forget that he was elected by the people, and this was one big slogan on which he got votes. There are people, let me share one thing with you. There are a lot of immigrants living in that country, in United States, Ambassador Bryza may correct me, who feel that illegal immigrants should not be accepted in this country because they do not have the wherewithal, they do not have the what you call the qualification for a professional. So that is something very, very tricky. And then not to talk to these countries. There are many countries, for example, you are very right, not only Brazil, there are number of countries around the world whose people have gone to the United States because it's basically 150 years back, it was an immigrant country. They accepted all people of color, you see. It's just like they say, President Mandela said a rainbow country. So a lot of people have come. And why did they come? Without fear that this is one country which will accept us. We'll work, we do our hard work, and we will contribute to, as they say, to make America great again. Something like this. They are there. It is the contribution of the immigrants in making what United States is today cannot be one cannot forget and one cannot ignore.
All right. Matthew, coming to you, I mean, I don't want to get into the America Great or America First or the whole immigrant issue, because that would be another show, complete show altogether. I'd like to understand, there are 39,000 immigrants in ICE custody by the end of December 2024. The Trump administration is also focusing its efforts on 1.4 million people whom an immigration judge has already ordered to be removed from the country. There are 655,000 non-citizens living in the US with criminal convictions or pending charges. And of course, Mexico has the largest brunt of people who are undocumented. What is, I know what the fate of these people is, but do you feel Mr. Trump can easily deport the more than 2.6 million people who are awaiting a hearing or a decision as far as their asylum claims are concerned? Second part of the question, what about the Obama-led era program known as DACA that protects from deportation 540,000 undocumented people brought to the country as children? Will that also be struck?
So the 2.6 million that are awaiting adjudication or have been deemed or have failed to gain permanent status in the U.S., finding them is a huge challenge. It's very difficult. They've blended into American society. And so I think as a purely practical matter, what the Trump administration is doing is pursuing first people they can find, which are those that have committed crimes and are on a list and where their places of residence are known. Also, by going after initially criminals, convicted criminals, you avoid a lot of the emotional resistance that is resulting from the cruelty of pulling people out of the United States and maybe separating their families. So the 2.6 million, I personally don't believe the Trump administration will ever deport that many. And in fact, as a matter of fact, the previous Trump administration deported far fewer people from the United States than did its predecessors, the Obama, Bush, George W. Bush administration or Bill Clinton administration. So I don't think they're ever going to get to all those 2.6 million. I think they're going to focus on the criminal cases now. And that alone is going to require billions, literally tens of billions of dollars in investment to create detention facilities and then add more personnel to track down people and then conduct the transportation.
All right, understood. Final question, Shahid Saab. Vice President J.D. Vance appeared on CBS's program Face the Nation, and he talked about an order by a federal judge that temporarily blocked Mr. Trump's proposal to end automatic citizenship for babies born to some immigrants, and this is what Matthew was also talking about. He says the issue boils down to whether the parents of these children plan to stay in the U.S., waiving off the notion that the proposal violates the 14th Amendment, as the judge found on Thursday. He said, and I quote, temporary residents, people who come in here, whether legally or illegally, and don't plan to stay, their children should not become American citizens. What's your comment on that?
I agree. Let me be honest, this has been misused for a very long time. We know it. And I don't think that is the right policy, that people come here, give birth. And then there are cases in which these people have not paid their bills to the hospitals, let me be honest. And then they go back. I don't think one can challenge this. This is absolutely right. Yes, those whose children are born there, they're citizens, they're born there, and the children become automatic citizens. That's right. And that is the 14th Amendment. But you have to make illegality legal. I don't think that will be right.
Okay, last one liner, because I'm very interested in this. What about this comment by J.D. Vance at CBS's Face the Nation? Do you feel they could rework the Constitution some way, somehow?
To me, I completely agree with Ambassador Kiani, and I don't think they need to reword the Constitution. I think the solution could be simple. It could be the directions given to State Department visa interviewers to say, figure out whether or not this family is planning to go to the U.S. simply to give birth to a child. If yes, don't give them a visa. If no, if they really want to go as tourists and they qualify, give them the visa. So you don't need to change the Constitution for that. The 14th Amendment was put in place to prevent basically children of slaves born in the United States from being denied U.S. citizenship, and that was 160 years ago. Okay?
True. Thank you very much, Matthew Bryza, former Ambassador, White House and senior State Department official, and thank you very much, Ambassador Shahid Masroor Kiani Saab, former Ambassador and Foreign Affairs Analyst, to have joined us to talk about this issue of immigration, the immigration policy of US President Donald Trump, and of course the different aspects around it, the different questions that a lot of people have around it. Thank you very much to both of my guests to have joined me on this very important topic. Let's come to our second topic, and that concerns power stability system, economic recovery, the State Bank of Pakistan's announcement as far as the basis points is concerned, where the 100 basis points have been cut, and now it is at 12%. The fact is that the monetary policy that has been announced today is very significant in the whole wake of all the economic decisions that have been taken in the view of the structural reforms and different reforms that the government has been putting into place since the last few months. At the same time, our Prime Minister has also directed the Power Division to cut electricity tariffs by ₹7 per unit for all the consumer categories, including the industrial sector across the country. And of course, we all also know that an IMF team is expected to visit Islamabad next month to discuss more on that. A World Bank report mission is also visiting Pakistan today and tomorrow. To discuss all that and more, we've been joined by two guests. Let me introduce them to you one by one. In the studios, we've been joined by Syed Ehsan, Deputy Executive Director of Prime. Thank you very much, Ali, to have joined us. And online, we have been joined by Dr. Usman Chohan, who's an advisor on economy with the CAS. Usman, thank you very much to have joined us as well. We will begin with you, Ali. And let's begin with the power divisions and cutting the electricity tariffs by ₹7 per unit for all consumer categories, including the industrial unit. How do you see this decision? What impact is it going to have, on the industrial sector, for example, on the consumer sector as well? And how far-reaching could this be as far as strengthening or bettering our economy is concerned?
Well, Omar, we've been arguing for a long time actually that the power tariffs do need to be reduced, because we have generation capacity which is much more than our demand. We are in a position to oversupply. So if we want to have a balance between the supply and demand, and that I think essentially is what the problem is with the power sector, then we do need to reduce tariffs. And reducing tariffs for both the industrial sector and the residential sector, it makes sense in terms of the government policy, because they do want to reduce or eliminate that differential between industry and the residential consumer. It is a reduction of 7 rupees. About 2 rupees worth of that reduction will be coming from the renegotiation of contracts, about 3% from the reduction in federal and provincial taxes, and then possibly another 2 rupees coming from reducing the premiums that the government-owned GenCos are asking for. So definitely it is a step in the right direction, because Pakistanis, whether in the residential sector or in the industrial sector, are paying more than their counterparts in the region. Chinese, if we compare ourselves to China, which is the manufacturing hub and which is what the sector that we want to provide impetus to, they are paying 89% less than we are, and in India they're paying around 40% less than we are. So it is a step in the right direction, but a 7 rupee reduction comes to around about 10 to 15%.
Yes.
And that is not going to be enough, but it is a step in the right direction. And if we can increase the electricity demand and keep doing it gradually over a long period of time, maybe over the next 2 to 3 years, we might be able to come to a position where we can balance our supply with our demand.
All right, balancing supply with demand. Usman, how do you see this measure that has been taken by our Prime Minister, securing 2 rupees per unit relief from the revised agreements with the IPPs? This is what Ali has also told us. Restrictions from lowering the return on equity for government-owned power projects, financial burden or taxes, of course, currently stands at ₹9 per unit, and now that is being reduced. How achievable or implementable is this in your point of view?
It is entirely implementable. It is something that is very necessary to do. The return on equity that was offered in a state of mind that was, or a global risk profile that was very, very different. And you can certainly have a very reasonable return on equity. First of all, the premium on Pakistan should not really be that high if you look at global drivers of energy demand. So I think that this has to be done. I think these reforms are a long time coming. They reflect a change in how the world has evolved in terms of demographics and energy. So I think this is a very good step being taken.
All right. Ali, when it comes to the finance division, it says that it has concerns that eliminating taxes could impact the government's fiscal targets, including tax revenue collection over a fiscal balance as outlined under the EFF.
Yeah.
Could these, in fact, affect the fiscal targets?
Well, if the FBR says so, then the government has to take that advice, because the FBR is the custodian of the incoming revenues that the government is going to be utilizing. So if the FBR advises that not to reduce the tariff differential and not to reduce the federal and provincial taxes on electricity, then the government will have to give that a serious ear. It should be possible, given a good enough strategic framework. It is possible to reduce the taxes, and we do need to reduce taxes, with the caveat there being that if you reduce the price of electricity, the increase in demand will be more than proportional, therefore the increase in the tax revenue collection would also be more than proportional. But the FBR is skeptical of this, and they are, of course, they are cautious because they are at the end of the day answerable for any deficits that occur. So I think that there's going to be resistance from the FBR. It has almost become tradition that the FBR resists any such move, but it should be possible. I think with some kind of negotiation, we should, the Prime Minister's office should be able to come to a number between 1 to 7 rupees.
All right. Usman, during a recent cabinet meeting, our Prime Minister has shared the progress of the task force on the structural reforms as far as the power sector is concerned. He praised their successful negotiation to amend contracts with the major power companies. We've all seen that and seen the effects of that as well. What more, in your point of view, needs to be done as far as the structural reforms in the power sector is concerned?
Yes, well, the important thing is to pursue this to its logical conclusion. This work is in progress, and the fundamental goal is that you want to reduce the circular debt crisis and to take a decisive position. When a nation takes a decisive position on anything, then it is no longer a lingering crisis for them. The Americans, if they really wanted to fix healthcare, they would. Similarly, if Pakistan really wanted to fix energy, it could and it shall. And so the task force is demonstrating that there has been work done. This will ease our fiscal deficit issues. The circular debt problem within the power sector will be resolved. So let's let this proceed to its logical conclusion. I think it's a little too early to celebrate, but work is in progress, and we have to keep in mind a certain deadline. So the signaling is happening in the context of a certain deadline, which is that the IMF team will be arriving at the end of next month, and they will be reviewing. And one of the areas of key concern that they highlighted when this program was put into force last year, beginning of last year, was that the power sector has to be dealt with. So it's all in that context that you're showing you've done enough, and we hope that it's done to the utmost.
Ali, a World Bank support mission is also visiting Pakistan starting from today and tomorrow as well to develop a work plan, agree on next steps to advance the preparation of the reactive compensation device project, which is critical for system reliability and stability of the north-south bi-directional power flows in the short to medium term. We all know that the World Bank has recently signed a 10-year agreement with Pakistan as well, which is a huge development for the World Bank as well as for Pakistan. What should we expect from this team that is coming?
Well, I think the team needs to study if this is a request that has gone from the government. They've asked the World Bank to intervene and to get involved in the funding of these STATCOMs that need to be installed. You might remember that in January 2023 and maybe about 5-6 months before that, there were 2 major electricity outages. They were the result of a surge from the south. That basically crippled the electricity supply in the country, and it leads to major losses to industry and so on. So this is a critical infrastructure intervention that the Pakistani national grid requires in order to sustain itself. The World Bank would generally be positive towards such a funding opportunity. However, it will discuss the issue with the USAID, which has extensive energy research programs going on in the country, and they will also be talking to other experts. So, I mean, there's nothing really like game-changing about this initiative, but the fact that the government is still willing to go to the World Bank for money, you know, that says something.
All right. Usman, 4 objectives have been outlined as far as the World Bank team is concerned to discuss the WBG review for the techno-economic studies conducted by USAID, to discuss with the EAD and the Ministry for Energy, the request received from the EAD for conducting this feasibility study, then understanding the status of a government request for the support and coordinate the nomination of the focal point and members as far as the implementation unit from NDTC is concerned, and finally developing a work plan and see what the next steps are going to be as far as advancing for the preparation of this project is concerned. How, again, a question, very layman question, but how quickly can we implement these objectives here?
It's not that difficult to do it in a timely manner, but the real question is why this is being done with foreign consultants. You see, in Pakistan, we've had this donor culture for decades, and what it means is that they do give you billions. So 20 billion is not coming in one go, it's coming over 10 years, so it's 2 billion per year. It's not a big number per year. And a lot of that doesn't actually go into Pakistan. It goes through consultants and other people like that who may or may not be Pakistani. We do have the indigenous capacity to do this kind of work. And we do have the indigenous capacity to muster the resources. That's where these reforms come in. I don't know if the donors will really bring such bright ideas with something that is actually quite a straightforward project. So I've always been an advocate for indigenous knowledge, even in technical fields such as engineering. But if you put that assumption aside and you ask, well, if this has been signed and they want to give this assistance, as my colleague was saying, the fact that we're going to the World Bank is itself something to think about. If we do go to them, and do we have the right people from their side working on it? Sure, and I'm confident that they will be able to do the feasibility and then the implementation thereafter in a reasonable course of time.
All right, Ali, another question that is not really related but is important. Media reports are indicating that the federal government has reportedly decided to review the PSDP for 2024-2025 with the aim to empower the local governments, the Tehsil district administrations, and ensure judicious utilization of corporate social responsibility funds. If this is true, what impact could this have?
I mean, Omar, this is a long time coming. This country is in great need of local government, and there are a lot of local government projects, I think, that kind of become ignored because the way that the funds are shared between the federation and the provinces. The federal governments and the provincial governments take away most of the money that is collected in revenue, and if some of those funds could be diverted to local government under a framework, then we could see the revival of city administrations really, participating in innovative and problem-solving solutions for citizens. That said, I don't understand how the Corporate Social Responsibility Fund can be diverted towards the local government initiative as well, because it's a federal fund and it is collected from companies that are also regulated at the federal level. So I'm not completely I do not have a complete understanding.
Maybe once, if and when it is implemented, we'll have more clarity as far as that is concerned. Usman, the Monetary Policy Committee of the State Bank of Pakistan met for the first session of the year and has now taken a decision to cut 100 basis points. Now that reduces the whole thing by 1%. What I'd like to understand is there are different impacts that it is going to have in the long term, in the short term. But before we go to that, what are the market expectations and how is the market going to react or has reacted to it?
Good question. The market was a little bit shaky over the last 48 hours because they were just debating, the market was speculating on the size of the cut. I think it was pretty obvious that a cut would happen, but the magnitude of the cut. You see, business leaders right now are advocating for at least a 5 percentage point cut. And that would not be such an absurd number because if you have a most recent indicator of 4% inflation and you just had an interest rate of 13%, you have a huge spread. You have a 9% positive real interest rate spread. And that is really extortionary. So business leaders are arguing for a 5% cut. What they got instead was a 1% cut. So you're at 12%, and yet inflation numbers are just 4% on a monthly reading. So I believe belief that we've been talking about this for a while, and several months, and I've been saying that you should be more aggressive about it. Now it's been 5 months. I don't know how much longer the SBP needs to wait to know that the economy is better than it was 18 months ago. You should actually cut it down and start stimulating the demand and get the business activity going within the framework you have agreed with the IMF for austerity. But you can't have austerity and then also conservatism at the same time, because really we've moved into a different phase of the macroeconomic cycle.
4 decisions the MPC says have been fruitful since their last meeting, and between this meeting they talk about the real GDP growth in the first quarter of fiscal year 2025 that was slightly lower than the earlier expectations. Then the current account will remain in surplus in December 2024. Despite a substantial increase in December, tax revenues remained below target in the fiscal year, in the first quarter of the fiscal year 2025, and global oil prices have also exhibited heightened volatility over the past few weeks. Now, do you feel the decision taken by the SPB to cut by 100 points only is justified looking at these conditions, or do you feel that the SPB is being cautious?
Well, I do think that the SBP is being cautious, and I agree with Usman in saying that they could possibly be more aggressive. Now, one could, kind of try to get into the mind of the government and try to figure out what it is that they're trying to achieve here. Now, you were right that we have a current account surplus, but at the same time, a lot of that portion of that surplus is coming from the remittance side, and it's not coming from the export side, right? So that is an issue that really bothers economists, and they are worried that this low inflation rate is actually an indication of a stagnating economy, and if the economy stagnates, then it will be extremely difficult for it to go into growth mode. But at the same time, see, the government has just launched its Udan plan, then the Prime Minister's National Economic Transformation plan has also come out, and there are a lot of key reforms in there that will help to change the way that the economy functions. Now, if the government aggressively lowers the interest rate and the economy does not have the capacity to turn it into productivity, the extra credit that will be available in the market, then it is only going to lead to more inflation. So it might be possible that the government is trying to maybe coincide the decrease in interest rate with possibly the upcoming budget, or maybe some other larger measure of reform, so that it feels more confident that when it lowers the interest rate, the extra credit will go towards investments that increase productivity.
Last question, one-liner, Usman. 5 to 7% inflation is the ultimate target of the State Bank, but the consumer inflation rate has also slowed to an over 6.5-year low of 4.1% in December. The central bank in its policy statement in December had said if this inflation is, expected inflation might be to an average sustainability below its earlier forecast range of 11% to 13.5% this year, it might pick up again in May because of increase in energy tariffs, new taxation measures, and a potential hike in the levy on petroleum prices. Can these be important risks in the coming months?
A short answer, yes, it certainly can. We're going to enter a very volatile phase now for 2 reasons. The Middle East, you have a ceasefire, but things can get very ugly very fast because Israel does have designs over its neighbors, nefarious designs, and that could manifest in very violent ways. So oil prices could be affected by that. And the second is that Trump is pushing some inflationary things. Although he says there's deflation coming from some measures, inflation is coming because of tariffs and all that. So we might be in a different international paradigm, and it's difficult for emerging markets to forecast how they will deal with this. So inflation is a risk.
Thank you very much, Usman, Chohan, and thank you very much, Saeed Ali, Ehsan, both of you, to have joined us for this important segment on economy. And it's important to make our viewers understand on how these measures are going to play out as far as the short and the long term are concerned. So thank you very much to the both of you. Let's come to our last 3 stories very quickly. The first concerns the Senate Standing Committee on Information Technology that has approved the Digital National Pakistan Bill 2025 that was introduced by Shahzad Fatma Khaja, the Minister for Information Technology and Telecommunication, in the Senate on the 24th of January this very year. It is, of course, a landmark piece of legislation that aims to transform Pakistan into a digitally empowered nation by fostering a dynamic digital society, robust digital economy, and efficient governance. Then, ladies and gentlemen, polio virus, something that we have been extremely concerned about, has been detected in samples from 3 districts in Sindh, that is Thatta, Umarkot and Naushero Feroz. We all know that poliomyelitis is an incurable disease, and that the important thing is that we need to give our children below the age of 5 the polio drops more than once a year. So please comply with the teams when they come to you. Finally, Romanian artifacts, including a 2,500-year-old gold helmet, have been stolen from the Drents Museum in the Netherlands. These artifacts belong to the National High History Museum in capital Bucharest and were on loan with other pieces from Romanian museums as part of a touring exhibition. They say, the museum says, in its 170-year existence, there has never been such a major incident. So let's hope that these artifacts are in fact recovered at the earliest, or else it might create a little tiff between the Romania and the Netherlands. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow. News story segments that concern you and Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.